I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who would allow herself to disappear. Yet there I was, standing in my garden, once vibrant with life and color, watching as the last petals of my favorite roses wilted under the scorching summer sun. My name is Audrey Wilson, and today, on my 85th birthday, I felt as faded as the photographs that lined my living room walls, mere echoes of a life once vibrant. "Mom, are you listening to me?" Matthew's voice pulled me from my thoughts. My son stood beside me, his expression a mixture of concern and impatience. I could see the city in him now, the hurried movements, the constant checking of his watch, the way his eyes never quite settled on anything for too long. And once again, he had forgotten my birthday. "Yes, dear. You were saying something about a retirement community," I replied, though the words felt like stones in my mouth. "Not just any retirement community, Mom. Willowbrook is the best in the state. They have doctors on staff, activities, people your own age." He placed his hand on my shoulder, a gesture that was meant to comfort, but felt like the gentle push of departure. "You can't keep living alone out here. You can barely see anymore. And after that fall last week, at your age, this will be the best place for you to spend your final days." I nodded, though inside I was crumbling. The fall had been nothing, a stumble over an uneven stone in the garden path, but Anna, my young neighbor, had made it sound like a catastrophe when she called Matthew. Now here he was, after months of sparse phone calls and missed birthdays, telling me it was time to leave the only place that still held memories of Jack, my husband, who had been gone for 15 years now. "This house is too much for you to maintain," Matthew continued, "and Lydia and I are worried. The kids hardly see you anymore." A bitter laugh nearly escaped me. The grandchildren hadn't visited in 3 summers, not since they discovered the delights of summer camp and friends with swimming pools. But I swallowed the hurt and smiled instead. "I'll think about it," I promised, knowing it would appease him for now. After Matthew left, I sat on the weathered bench Jack had built decades ago and listened to the silence of my garden. It had once been alive with laughter, children running through sprinklers, family gatherings where we'd feast on vegetables we'd grown together. Now, it was just another task I couldn't manage anymore. That evening, I found myself staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, truly seeing the woman I'd become. Silver hair that I no longer bothered to style, deep lines mapping a life of both joy and sorrow, and eyes, once bright blue, now clouded with cataracts and something else I couldn't quite name. Was it resignation? Fear? I leaned closer, searching for the woman I used to be. A loud crash from downstairs startled me out of my contemplation. I grabbed my cane and made my way down the stairs, each step slow and deliberate. The living room was dark, but I could see that the wind had blown open a window, knocking over a vase of withered flowers. As I moved to close it, I noticed headlights sweeping across my driveway. Strange. Matthew had left hours ago, and Anna never visited after dark. I peered through the curtains but couldn't make out the vehicle. Then the porch light illuminated a face I hadn't seen in years, a face that made my blood run cold. It was Benjamin Reeves, my daughter-in-law's father, the man who had tried to buy my property for years, claiming it would make a perfect location for his real estate developments. The man who had once threatened that I would regret not selling to him while I still had a choice. And now, here he was, standing on my doorstep with a folder in his hands, smiling as if we were old friends about to discuss the weather. What could he possibly want at this hour? And why, as his knuckles rapped against my door, did I feel an overwhelming sense of dread? I stood frozen behind the door, debating whether to answer. Benjamin Reeves's presence felt like an ill omen, especially after Matthew's talk of retirement homes. After the third knock, I took a deep breath and opened the door, just enough to see him clearly but not enough to invite him in. "Mrs. Wilson, looking lovely as ever," he said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "I hope I'm not disturbing you too late. It's past 8, Mr. Reeves. Most people call before visiting at this hour." My voice was steadier than I expected it to be. He chuckled, adjusting his expensive tie. "Direct as always. That's what I've always admired about you, Audrey. May I come in?" I have something that might interest you." Against my better judgment, I let him in. The folder in his hands seemed to hold some importance, and curiosity got the better of me. My living room, with its faded floral sofa and walls adorned with family photos, suddenly felt small and inadequate under Benjamin's scrutinizing gaze. He was everything my late husband Jack wasn't: polished, calculated, and cold. "I'll get straight to the point," he said, opening the folder. "I've learned that your son is looking into retirement options for you." The statement hung in the air like an accusation. "You've been speaking to Lydia," I said, more a confirmation than a question. My daughter-in-law had always been close to her father, perhaps too close when it came to family matters. "She's concerned about you, as is Matthew. We all are." He spread out papers on my coffee table. Blueprints, from what I could tell without my glasses. "This is Sunset Valley, my newest development. Luxury condominiums for active seniors. Private gardens, 24-hour medical staff, all the amenities you could want." I stared at the glossy brochures, beautiful images of elderly people laughing together in manicured gardens that looked nothing like the wild, personal space I'd cultivated for decades. "And why would you show me this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "I want to offer you a deal. Sell your property to me, at well above market value, I might add, and I'll guarantee you one of the premium units at Sunset Valley." He leaned forward, his voice dropping as if sharing a secret. "Your land is valuable, Audrey. This house is falling apart, but the acreage, it's the perfect location for my new project." So that was it. My garden, my home, my memories, all just real estate to him. But what struck me most was the certainty with which he made the offer, as if my departure from my home was already decided. "Does Matthew know you're here?" I asked. A flicker of something, hesitation perhaps, crossed his face. "Matthew wants what's best for you, and what's best isn't living alone in a house that's becoming dangerous for someone in your condition." My condition. As if age itself was a disease that required quarantine. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Reeves, but I'm not ready to sell my home." I stood up, signaling that our conversation was over. He gathered his papers slowly, deliberately. "Think about it, Audrey. The offer won't last forever, and neither will your independence, I'm afraid." After he left, I sat in the dark, his words echoing in my mind. The threat was veiled but clear. I picked up the phone to call Matthew, but hesitated. What if he already knew about his father-in-law's visit? What if this was all part of some plan they'd concocted together? The next morning, I called Dr. Patterson, my longtime physician. If my family was so concerned about my condition, perhaps it was time to get an objective assessment. The receptionist scheduled me for later that week, sounding surprised that I was making the appointment myself and not through my son. 3 days later, Dr. Patterson gave me a thorough examination. He adjusted my medication for high blood pressure, recommended a stronger prescription for my glasses, and suggested physical therapy for my arthritis. But his overall assessment took me by surprise. "You're in remarkable health for your age, Audrey," he said. "Your mind is sharp, your mobility is good with assistance, and with proper management of your conditions, there's no reason you can't continue living independently." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by determination. I would not be shuffled off to some facility, whether Willowbrook or Sunset Valley, based on exaggerated concerns about my health. When I returned home, I found my front door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it before leaving. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed, but the air felt different somehow, as if someone had moved through my space, touching nothing but changing everything. In the kitchen, a teacup sat on the counter, one I hadn't used that morning, and beside it was a business card from a local attorney who specialized in elder law, with a handwritten note on the back. "Call me before you sign anything." Who had been in my house, and who was trying to warn me? As I pondered these questions, my phone rang. It was Matthew. "Mom, good news. We've secured you a spot at Willowbrook. We're coming tomorrow to help you start packing." The decisiveness in his voice sent a chill through me. It wasn't a suggestion or an offer. It was a plan already in motion. And I had a sinking feeling that Benjamin Reeves's visit, the mysterious entry into my home, And now this sudden announcement were all connected in ways I was only beginning to understand. I spent the night in a state of anxious preparation, not for packing as Matthew expected, but for confrontation. By morning, I had made tea and arranged a plate of the lemon cookies Matthew had loved since childhood. If they were planning to remove me from my home, they would at least have to look me in the eye over my kitchen table while doing it. When Matthew's car pulled into the driveway, I noticed it wasn't just him and Lydia. Benjamin Reeves's sleek black sedan followed behind them. My suspicions deepened. "Mom!" Matthew embraced me with genuine warmth, momentarily making me doubt my concerns. "You look good. Did you do something different with your hair?" "Just washed it," I replied, watching as Lydia gave me a perfunctory kiss on the cheek before immediately beginning to assess the living room with calculating eyes. Benjamin hung back, nodding politely. "Mr. Reeves thought he could help with the logistics of the move," Matthew explained, seeing my questioning look. "Since he has experience with seniors transitioning to new living arrangements." "I bet he does," I thought bitterly. "Before we discuss any move," I said calmly, "I'd like to share something with you." I handed Matthew the report from Dr. Patterson, which clearly stated I was capable of independent living with minimal support. Matthew scanned it, his brow furrowing. "That's great, Mom, but it doesn't change the fact that this house is too much for you. The stairs, the garden, the maintenance." "Which is why I've been exploring other options," I interrupted. "Options that don't involve Willowbrook or Sunset Valley." Lydia and Benjamin exchanged glances, a silent communication that confirmed what I had suspected. They were working together. "What other options?" Lydia asked, her voice tight. "I've been speaking with Anna, my neighbor. She's part of a co-housing community that's starting just outside of town. Seniors living independently but sharing resources and support. I could sell this house, yes, but use the money to buy into that community. I'd have my own cottage, no stairs, a small garden I could manage, and neighbors who check on each other." I hadn't actually been discussing this with Anna, but the business card left in my kitchen had led me to research alternatives overnight. The co-housing community was real, and it was perfect. "That sounds experimental," Lydia said dismissively. "Willowbrook is established, reputable, and considerably more expensive," I pointed out, "costing nearly all of my savings within a few years, according to their brochure. While this co-housing arrangement would leave me financially independent." Benjamin cleared his throat. "Audrey, perhaps you haven't considered the full picture. Your property has significant value, but only if sold to a developer who can utilize the entire acreage. Individual homebuyers wouldn't pay nearly as much." "Is that so?" I asked innocently. "Because I've already had an appraisal done, and I've received interest from several buyers, including a young family who loves the idea of raising their children here, and an environmental trust that wants to preserve the land." It was a bluff, but one that landed effectively. Benjamin's composed facade cracked slightly, revealing a flash of anger. "Mom," Matthew interjected, "we're just trying to help. You can't stay here alone, and we thought Willowbrook would give you the care you need, while conveniently freeing up my property for your father-in-law's development," I said quietly. "Did you know he came here offering me a deal just days after you mentioned a retirement home?" Matthew's shocked expression told me he hadn't known, and for a moment, I saw my son again. Not the busy professional too occupied for his mother, but the honest boy I had raised. "Benjamin, is this true?" Matthew turned to his father-in-law. "I simply saw an opportunity that could benefit everyone," Benjamin replied smoothly. "Audrey gets premium accommodation. You have peace of mind knowing she's cared for. And yes, I acquire land that's perfect for development. Business is about finding these mutual advantages. Except I never agreed to sell," I reminded him. "And now I find you all here, ready to pack up my life without my consent." The tension in the room was palpable. Lydia looked uncomfortable but resolute. Benjamin maintained his businesslike composure, and Matthew seemed torn, glancing between his wife and me. "I think," I said, rising from my chair with as much dignity as my arthritic joints would allow, "that you should all leave now. I'll consider my options carefully, and I'll make my own decisions about my future." They left reluctantly, with Matthew promising to call me later. As their cars disappeared down the driveway, I felt a mixture of triumph and exhaustion. The confrontation had drained me, but it had also ignited something I hadn't felt in years, a fierce determination to take control of my life. That afternoon, Anna stopped by with a basket of fresh vegetables from her garden. When I mentioned the business card left in my kitchen, her eyes widened. I thought about leaving a card after I found out what they were planning, but I never actually came inside, she confessed. But I know who might have. Do you remember Claire Peterson? She used to be a paralegal before she retired. Claire Peterson. The name was familiar. She had been at one of the community meetings I'd attended last year. She's been helping seniors with legal issues, Anna continued. And she's been particularly interested in cases where family members pressure elders into selling their homes to developers. There's been a pattern in this county. A pattern. The word echoed in my mind as pieces started falling into place. I remembered other elderly neighbors who had suddenly moved to care facilities. Their properties quickly transformed into development projects. Had Benjamin been behind those as well? Do you have Claire's number? I asked Anna. Later that evening, after speaking with Claire, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing documents she had emailed me. Reports of questionable practices by assisted living facilities affiliated with Benjamin's developments, testimonies from seniors who had been pressured to sell, and even a pending investigation by the County Ethics Board. This wasn't just about my property anymore. It was about a systematic exploitation of vulnerable seniors, often facilitated by their own families. And somehow, I had become part of it. As I closed my laptop, the power suddenly went out, plunging the house into darkness. I reached for my emergency flashlight, only to hear the unmistakable sound of the back door handle turning. Someone was trying to get in. My heart pounded in my chest as I gripped the flashlight, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was in the darkness. The back door rattled again, followed by the sound of breaking glass. I moved as quietly as my cane would allow, heading not for the phone, which would be useless without power, but for the front door. If I could make it to Anna's house. A floorboard creaked behind me, and I swung around, shining the flashlight directly into the face of the intruder. To my shock, it wasn't a stranger, but Lydia, looking as startled as I felt. "What are you doing in my house?" I demanded, my voice steadier than I expected. She blinked in the harsh light. The power went out. "I came to check on you." "Through the back door? Breaking a window?" Lydia's composure slipped. "I knocked, but you didn't answer. I was worried something had happened to you." I didn't believe her for a second. "So you broke in? Without calling the police or Anna if you were truly concerned?" She didn't respond, and in the beam of my flashlight, I noticed something in her hand, a folder that looked suspiciously like the one containing the documents Claire had sent me. "You're looking for my research on your father's business practices," I said, the realization dawning on me. "Did he send you to destroy evidence?" "It's not what you think, Audrey." Lydia's voice hardened. "Dad's developments have helped hundreds of seniors live better lives. A few malcontents spreading rumors don't change that. They're not rumors if the County Ethics Board is investigating," I countered. "And they're not rumors if you're breaking into my home to steal documents." Lydia stepped closer, her face tense in the flashlight's beam. "You have no idea what you're getting involved in. Just agree to move to Willowbrook. Let Matthew and me handle the house. Everyone wins. Except the seniors who are manipulated out of their homes and savings," I said. "I've seen the reports, Lydia. The hidden fees at these facilities, the rapid depletion of residents' assets, the connection between your father's real estate company and these retirement solutions." And for a moment, doubt flickered across Lydia's face. Then her expression hardened again. "You're an old woman making accusations about things you don't understand. Who do you think people will believe? You, with your failing eyesight and occasional confusion, or a respected businessman who provides housing for the elderly?" Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed how she saw me, not as a person with agency and intelligence, but as a declining asset to be managed. In that moment, I saw clearly what I needed to do. "I think," I said carefully, "that people will believe documented evidence, testimonies from multiple seniors, and the findings of an ethics investigation, all of which I've copied and sent to several trusted friends, as well as Claire Peterson, who, I believe you know, is building a case against your father's business practices. It was a partial bluff. I had shared some documents with Claire but hadn't had time to distribute everything widely. Still, the shock on Lydia's face told me the threat had landed. Now, I continued, I'm going to Anna's house to call the police and report a break-in. I suggest you're gone by the time they arrive. Lydia hesitated, clearly weighing her options. This isn't over, Audrey. You're still going to need care, and Matthew and I are still your family. Don't turn us into enemies. I'm not the one who broke into an elderly woman's home at night, I reminded her. That line was crossed by you. After she left, I did indeed go to Anna's, where we called both the police and Matthew. The conversation with my son was one of the most painful I've ever had. He arrived at Anna's house shortly after the police had come and gone, looking shattered. I didn't know, he kept saying. I swear, Mom, I didn't know about any of this. I thought Willowbrook was legitimate. I thought we were helping you. Did you think breaking into my home and stealing my documents was helping me? I asked, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. What? No. Lydia told me she was going to drop off some brochures for you to look at. I had no idea she would... He trailed off, the reality of his wife's actions sinking in. Matthew, I said gently, you need to decide where you stand. Not just about my living situation, but about these business practices that have been hurting vulnerable people. People like me. He nodded slowly, looking older than I'd ever seen him. I'll talk to Lydia. And her father. This isn't right. Over the next few weeks, my life transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. With Claire Peterson's help, I filed a formal complaint about Benjamin's pressure tactics and Lydia's break-in. Matthew, true to his word, confronted both his wife and father-in-law about their actions. The resulting family rift was painful but necessary. Lydia, faced with evidence of her father's unethical practices, had a decision to make. To my surprise, after several difficult conversations with Matthew, she chose her marriage over her father's business interests. It wasn't an easy reconciliation between us, but her acknowledgement of wrongdoing was a start. As for my living situation, I did decide to move, but on my own terms. The co-housing community Anna had mentioned became not just a possibility, but a reality. I sold my house to a conservation trust that would preserve the garden and surrounding land, using part of the proceeds to secure a small, accessible cottage in the new community. The day before my move, as I sat in my garden one last time, Matthew joined me on the bench Jack had built. I'm sorry, Mom, he said, watching a butterfly land on one of the few remaining roses. I should have listened to you from the beginning. Yes, you should have, I agreed, but without bitterness. But it's never too late to start listening. Are you sure about this co-housing place? I could help you find something closer to us now that... He trailed off, not needing to complete the thought. Now that the plan to profit from my vulnerability had been exposed, now that Lydia was making amends, now that he was truly considering my needs rather than convenience. I'm sure, I said firmly. I've met the other residents. They're like me, independent but realistic about needing some support. We'll have shared meals twice a week, transportation help, and each other. He nodded, accepting my decision. I'll visit more often, I promise. I'll hold you to that, I said, patting his hand. As Matthew helped me pack the last of my belongings, I found a box of old photographs in the attic. Among them was a picture I'd forgotten. Jack standing proudly in our garden the year we'd moved in, holding toddler Matthew on his hip, both of them laughing at the camera. Your father always said a garden is like life, I told Matthew, showing him the photograph. It needs constant attention, and sometimes you have to prune away what's not working to let new growth thrive. Matthew smiled, understanding the metaphor. Are you saying I was overdue for some pruning? We all were, I replied. Even me. The next morning, as I prepared to leave my home of 50 years, I felt not loss, but anticipation. At 85, I was starting a new chapter, not one defined by decline and dependence, but by community and agency. As I locked the door for the final time, I noticed a small envelope that had been slipped underneath. Inside was a note in unfamiliar handwriting. Thank you for your courage. Others will benefit from what you've begun. But this isn't over yet. Be careful. See. Claire's warning sent a chill through me. What did she mean? It wasn't over. Benjamin's development plans for my property had been thwarted, and the ethics investigation was proceeding. What else could be happening? I tucked the note into my purse as Matthew loaded the last of my boxes into his car. Whatever this new threat might be, I wouldn't face it alone, and I wouldn't back down. My first 3 months at Silver Gardens co-housing community passed in a blur of adjustments and discoveries. My cottage, though smaller than my old house, felt perfect. One level, wide doorways for my occasional wheelchair days, and a small garden plot that was exclusively mine to tend. More importantly, I was surrounded by peers who valued independence as much as I did, but understood the power of community. Claire Peterson had become a regular visitor, updating me on the investigation into Benjamin Reeves' business practices. The county ethics board had expanded their inquiry, and other seniors had come forward with similar stories after hearing about my stand. "You've started something important, Audrey," Claire told me one afternoon as we sat on my small porch. "But Benjamin still has a lot of influence in this county. The investigation is moving slowly, and he's fighting back every step of the way." "What about his other developments?" I asked. "Are they still proceeding?" Claire's expression darkened. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. He's submitted plans for a new project, ironically, right near here. And he's using a different company name. But it's him." My heart sank. "So he's just continuing elsewhere, using the same tactics?" "Not exactly the same," she replied. "He's being more careful, but I've heard from families that the same pressure tactics are happening, just more subtly." She hesitated before continuing. "And there's something else. Benjamin approached the board of Silver Gardens last week with an offer to partner on future phases of development. The implications were clear. Benjamin was trying to get his foot in the door of our community, perhaps as a first step toward eventual control. The board declined, Claire assured me, but they admitted his proposal was financially attractive. With building costs increasing, some members are worried about completing the planned expansions without additional investment. That night, I couldn't sleep. The thought of Benjamin infiltrating this haven we had created troubled me deeply. I had assumed my battle was won when I secured my place here, but it seemed the war for seniors' dignity and independence was far from over. The next morning, I joined the weekly community breakfast in our shared clubhouse. As I sipped my coffee, listening to my neighbors discuss everything from gardening tips to local politics, an idea began to form in my mind. Eleanor, a former business professor who had moved in a month after me, noticed my thoughtful expression. "You're plotting something, Audrey." I recognized that look. I smiled. "Maybe I am. What do you know about community land trusts?" Eleanor's eyes lit up. "Quite a bit, actually. I helped establish one in my previous community." "Why do you ask?" By the end of breakfast, Eleanor and I had scheduled a meeting with 3 other residents who had relevant expertise. James, a retired attorney, Sophia, who had worked in urban planning, and Robert, who had experience in nonprofit management. Within a week, we had drafted a proposal to restructure Silver Gardens as a community land trust, which would protect it from the kind of takeover Benjamin might attempt. When we presented the idea to the full community, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Many residents shared their own experiences with developers pressuring seniors, and some had specifically chosen Silver Gardens to escape such tactics. "This isn't just about protecting our community," I explained to the assembled group. "It's about creating a model that other senior communities can follow. A way to ensure that our housing remains affordable and self-governed, not just for us, but for future residents." The process wasn't simple. There were legal hurdles, financial considerations, and naturally, some resistance from those worried about change. But within 2 months, we had drafted bylaws for the Silver Gardens Community Land Trust and begun the legal process of reorganization. Word of our efforts spread, and to my surprise, Matthew became one of our strongest advocates. After his disillusionment with Lydia's and Benjamin's actions, he had begun questioning other aspects of how society treated its elders. He connected us with younger activists working on affordable housing initiatives, creating an intergenerational alliance that strengthened our position. Of course, Benjamin Reeves didn't take this lying down. When he learned of our plans, he launched a counter-campaign, spreading concerns about the financial stability of resident-controlled senior housing and suggesting that professional management was safer. The tension came to a head at a county zoning meeting where both our land trust proposal and Benjamin's new development plans were on the agenda. The room was packed with seniors from various communities, including many from facilities Benjamin had developed. Benjamin spoke first, presenting his vision of dignified senior living with professional oversight. His presentation was polished, his promises attractive. But when it was my turn to speak, I had something he didn't: authenticity and the moral high ground. "I'm not a professional developer or a lawyer," I began. "I'm simply an 85-year-old woman who refused to be treated as anything less than a full citizen with the right to make my own choices." I shared my story: the pressure tactics, the break-in, the discovery of the pattern of exploitation, and then introduced several other seniors who briefly told similar stories. "What we're proposing today isn't just about one community," I concluded. "It's about recognizing that aging doesn't diminish our right to self-determination." The Silver Gardens Community Land Trust offers a model of senior housing that preserves both independence and affordability, without sacrificing the support we sometimes need. We're not asking for charity or special treatment. We're creating solutions that honor our dignity and protect our futures. The board voted unanimously to approve our land trust designation and placed Benjamin's development proposal under extended review pending the ethics investigation. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a significant step. As we left the meeting, Benjamin approached me, his public smile replaced by a cold stare. "This isn't over, Audrey. You've cost me millions and damaged my reputation. People like you don't understand how the world works." "On the contrary," I replied calmly, "I understand perfectly how your world works. That's why I'm helping build a different one." In the year that followed, our community land trust became a reality. The ethics investigation into Benjamin's business practices resulted in significant fines and new county regulations protecting seniors from predatory housing practices. Matthew and Lydia, after much soul-searching and therapy, rebuilt their marriage on a more honest foundation, with Lydia eventually cutting professional ties with her father completely. As for me, I found purpose and community I hadn't experienced since Jack was alive. My small garden plot flourished, producing vegetables I shared with neighbors. I taught gardening classes to visiting schoolchildren, passing on the knowledge Jack and I had accumulated over decades. On my 86th birthday, the community surprised me by dedicating our new communal garden in my name. "The Audrey Wilson Garden of Resilience," the plaque read. Standing there, surrounded by friends both old and new, I felt Jack's presence keenly. "You were right, my love," I whispered to his memory as Matthew helped me cut the ribbon. "Sometimes you have to prune away what's not working to let new growth thrive." Life had taught me its most important lesson late: that age needn't diminish us if we refuse to be diminished, that standing up for oneself can mean standing up for many, and that it's never too late to plant seeds for a future you might not see but that others will enjoy. As twilight fell and the celebration continued around me, I sat on a bench similar to the one Jack had built so long ago. I watched as residents of all ages, from children visiting their grandparents to seniors in their 90s, moved through the garden, talking and laughing together. This, I thought, is the true harvest of a life well lived. Not just the flowers and fruits we cultivate in soil, but the communities we help create, the stands we take, and the spaces we make for both independence and connection to flourish side by side. The garden would continue to grow, with or without me, and in that knowledge, I found peace.